How to avoid ABSD? Shawn, tell us.
With the recent cooling measure, right? ABSD just getting higher and higher and higher, right? Oh my goodness, right? So the key here is that
Can we don't even pay a single cent for ABSD?
yes, right. I think that's the key thing we want to look at, right? And I think that, you know what, if you want to contribute to nation building through ABSD, hey, I mean, you're happy, go for it. But personally, I will not. Okay, so let's see how we're going to avoid ABSD. Let's find out.
Hi, I'm Ivan.
And I'm Shawn.
And today we are from
Quadrant.
Okay, today we're going to cover this super interesting topic, right? Which is that how can we avoid paying ABSD? So Shawn, let's share method one.
Okay, so number one is to really understand the residential property in Singapore first. Yeah. So for HDB, most of the time you need two names to purchase HDB lah. So therefore, pretty much you can only buy one property lah. So in this scenario, most of the time it's very tough to even avoid ABSD. However, what the market really means when we're talking about this whole thing, you hear terms like decoupling lah, you hear terms like so that husband can buy one unit, wife can buy one unit. Right? All this all typically means is really pointing to the private properties in Singapore. Why? Because for private property in Singapore, you can actually use only one name to purchase a private residential property in Singapore. Now, ABSD only ties down to Singapore residential property.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in short, right, if you're talking about buying residential property, right, the way to avoid paying ABSD is to just buy one residential property per name.
Yeah, so husband, wife, or if you have multiple girlfriend.
Him. Very sensitive.
Okay, so the key here, in all
your mom is your girlfriend, right?
Also lah.
Yeah.
Also lah, right? My dear daughter is my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Right. So the key here is, of course, just buy one Singapore residential property, right? To be more specific, private residential property under each name, right? So some argue, say, hey, like that I can buy under my children's name, everything. So this is actually people most of the time they're talking about buy under child below 21 years old. So they put it in this thing called the trust, under trust, right? But I would highly recommend not to do that.
Yes,
right?
Because when you buy in trust, you wouldn't even be able to borrow or leverage to buy the property. And without leverage, right, to be frank, investing into a property without leverage doesn't make sense.
Really doesn't make sense. Really doesn't make sense. Imagine you put up $1 million, $2 million in cash only to get like 6K rental, 7K rental, right? I think that if you invest into S&P 500 with that same money or in shares, right, you just get way more, right? But of course, once again, if you want to learn a little bit more about leveraging for property, all right, and how to leverage safely and how does leverage really help you guys to really make more money in property investment, right? Do check out this video, all right, about leveraging for property so that you can really maximize your profit for property investment itself.
Okay, so about method 2, right? Method 2 is to invest into non-residential properties, like for example, commercial properties like offices, shop houses, or retail properties. And the other alternative is to invest into industrial properties in Singapore. So because these are non-residential properties, right, they are not affected by ABSD at all.
Yeah, so in this scenario, you are still able to own multiple properties, just that not multiple residential property lah, right? So it could be you own one residential, maybe one condo, your wife own one condo, then you can own like 2 to 3 commercial property, right? In this scenario, there will not be any ABSD when you own that 2 to 3 commercial properties. Yeah.
So Shawn, can you really own multiple properties in Singapore without ABSD?
Of course, you can really own multiple properties, right? It's just that you cannot really own multiple residential property in Singapore in today's context without paying ABSD, right? So yes, you can buy just across asset classes, all right? Buying to a commercial property doesn't make your portfolio any worse off or anything, right? Just diversifying in different asset classes, right? And of course, I think Ivan, definitely you have
quite a few
good industrial properties, and quite a few even shop houses, right? And all those, do you have any problem renting those out?
No problem. So I think we have been a beneficiary of COVID-19. I mean, not to say that a lot of people are not affected by COVID-19, but we got lucky in this sense whereby when we invest into industrial, e-commerce has been coming up, the demand for industrial spaces, storage spaces have been like skyrocketing, and hence, right, we have no issues in renting out our industrial properties.
Yeah, so the key here is that, of course, if you were to go anywhere outside of Singapore residential property, I think that is where the knowledge tend to be a bit lower because knowledge is low, of course fear is higher. Alright, but the number one thing that you can just take a look is that you can just walk around, let's say for example you're looking at a shop house, walk around that street and look at is it really tenanted across the shop house, or perhaps even buy a unit that is already tenanted.
Right, and method number 3, right, is to invest in overseas properties.
Yes, alright, of course, overseas property. The number one thing that I always hear is this: wow, the property is so far away. Right?
How do I even manage the property?
How do I know it's even there, right? I mean, that's the main fear over here.
What if the tenant run away?
Yeah, the tenant run away, wow, then don't have collect money and everything. So all these are the main fears when it comes to overseas property. But I want you to understand one main thing over here, alright? We invest in Singapore properties, right? Because we are Singaporeans. Let's put it that way, right? But let's say for example, you look at the UK, let's say UK market, right? You must understand that there are so many more million of people investing in the UK market, right? Locals, right? So you think about it, it's just that because we're just unfamiliar with the market. So the number one thing to do is actually, number one is to really just get familiarized with the market, understand who to approach, alright?
Closing the knowledge gap.
Closing the knowledge gap, of course, before jumping in to invest in any overseas properties. Right?
I think to be simple, just follow experienced investor with like solid track record.
Yeah, I think to be more specific, of course, many people might have different agendas, right? And therefore, you might not enter into the best properties, right? But the number one key thing to really protect yourself, if you buy from big listed developers that have a market cap of bigger than maybe CDL and Faiz organization in Singapore combined, I mean, you scared what? Right? In that scenario, you scared can won't build. Alright, so I mean that's the key thing over here. So you can reduce your risk through all these factors over here.
Okay, let's simplify it. Invest into developments, right, with developers who have solid track record.
I think that's the number one thing that you can do to reduce your risk when you buy overseas property. Right? Of course, that being said, okay, I think once again, yes, there are very huge knowledge gap and things like that. But of course, when going into overseas property, it doesn't matter if you buy overseas industrial, overseas commercial, or overseas residential property, right? ABSD is only governing Singapore residential property. Therefore, even if you buy let's say a UK residential property, alright, it doesn't have any ABSD involved.
Yeah. So I think one thing that is important to clarify, right, is that if you invest into an overseas residential property, right, it does not affect you buying any private properties in Singapore. So there's no ABSD if you buy a UK property or a New Zealand property, and when you buy the Singapore residential property, there's still no ABSD for the first property.
Yes, but do take note that this is a bit different for when it comes to HDB. So HDB still have this rule called MOP, right? So basically what happens over here is that if you were to buy, let's say, overseas property, then you probably have some issues buying to HDB itself, right? So in this now, this really pretty much applies only for the private market, okay? And therefore, just to ensure that you check the rules and regulations, and of course to really understand, once again, close down the knowledge gap before you jumping into any purchasing of any overseas property.
So I hope you enjoyed these 3 methods that we have shared. So once again, if you like what we are sharing right now, please give us a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel. So once again, I'm Ivan.
And I'm Shawn.
And we see you soon. Bye!